Welcome to the Women's Connection. I'm Barrie-Louise Switzen, your moderator. The Women's Connection is a program about events shaping women's lives and helping one gain authentic power on a personal or professional level. So won't you stay tuned?
Welcome. People will talk about sex before they'll talk about finances. Which category are you in? With me today is Julia Valentine, and we're going to talk about retirement financing. 1 in 8 Americans are basically seniors, and the numbers are going to continue to grow. And you know what? We're going to be seniors before we know it. So let's find out how to save for retirement. Or do we really retire? And I would like to welcome Julia. Julia, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you for joining me. What exactly do you do?
I spent about 8 years going around the world and asking people that I found appealing, who I found joyful, I found them fulfilled, healthy, vibrant. I spent that time asking people how did they manage to create that life for themselves. And some of them had a ton of money, some of them didn't. It almost seemed for a while that after a certain point it didn't matter. And I was working in finance all that time, but I was also interested in psychology of it, the motivation of it, sort of the softer side of it. And after I did all that research, I did it for myself. I never intended to do anything with it. That was kind of my own, journey of discovery. And when I figured it out, I said, okay, I see patterns. After you speak to people over and over again, the same things come up. And I said, I see the patterns. Let me write them down. And so slowly I said, you know what, I have a book here. I see the themes. So maybe I should publish the book and give it to people and help them make that transition. And so slowly I kind of got into that. And then I created seminars that help people actually figure out what they need to do financially as well. But I think that what's different about my journey is that I'm interested in quality of life overall. I'm interested in sex and finance and, health and everything. I'm interested in how do we live well. And I sort of call it, I want the second half of my life to be better than the first. That's just my personal journey and my personal desire for myself. And I share that with anyone who cares to listen.
Out came a book called Joy Compass, How to Make Your Retirement the Treasure of Your Life.
Right.
That is so exciting.
Thank you. Yes.
There's exercises that somebody can do to figure out what they want?
Yes, because a lot of people kind of know what they want. I fall into that category, but many people need to be asked questions. What is it that you want? And even for myself, I know that, this is what Maslow said, Abraham Maslow said, if you can figure out your needs, it's a significant psychological achievement. That's what he called it. And it's actually true. If you get to the bottom of what exactly makes you happy, I offer that process of discovering what makes you happy and me happy and someone else happy. So it's not advice in traditional form, do X, Y, Z. I think that's way gone. We're way past that. There's no more homogeneous advice. It's all about helping people really figure out what is their unique expression of a good life, good quality of life.
What is the first thing somebody does when they're trying to analyze what their quality of life should be?
Quality of life should be, right. So the first thing and this is sort of the threshold, if you pass it, then you're more likely to be fine. I found that the first threshold is really, what do you believe about getting older? What is your belief? And it's so interesting because when I looked at that question, after I wrote the book, the first version of the book, Yale School of Public Health came up with a study. And Becca Levy, who did the study, said, if you think that getting older, as you get older, you're wise versus declining, it adds 7.5 years to your lifespan. So she was able to quantify what the value of that one belief is. And if you compare that to taking up exercise or stopping smoking, etc., that results in 4 extra years of life. So imagine just one thought that you can change in your head, and boom, you get all the extra, years of vitality and health and joy. And, it's just amazing. And I found that people who were doing well, they had that belief. They were undeterred. They were like, well, yeah, I'm getting older, so what? I can do X, Y, Z, and I really enjoy it.
What you're saying, it's all a mindset of how you're thinking on your
Yes.
approach to retirement.
Yes.
And then there's the approach to finances. So how do you mesh the two, your finances and your thinking pattern?
It's a combination, right? So we're so complex. Life is so complex, right? So after you get over that initial hump of, what do I think? And you know why it's so dangerous? Because we acquire these beliefs in childhood by watching other people. So a lot of times they're unconscious. So when I sit down and I talk to people about finances, the first thing they tell me is that I'm 73, I really don't look forward to anything else. And I'm like, why? What are you talking about? Your best years are ahead of you. Your best year is now. Whatever it is that's going on, your best year is now. And so the attitude and the mind maps, we call that, right? Attitudes and beliefs, that's one. Secondly, planning is a part of it, right? So there are other things, finding out what you need, what your needs are, what really makes you happy and fulfilled, and understanding components of well-being, that's another process. And financially, because you're asking me about financial, being one step ahead, that's what planning is. It's really thinking one step ahead, If you need money later on, well, you need to do certain things today. You need to buy certain insurances today. You need to put the wills and the trusts and all these documents in there today, So just being that one step ahead of the game is going to put you in a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful situation.
The $64,000 question is,
Right.
How much does one need to retire? Mm-hmm. And it's like the mystery question.
Right. So what you do is you start with figuring out your lifestyle, right?
Okay.
And you figure this out by saying, here's where I'd like to live. That's the cost of living in this area. Sometimes, people stay where they are. Sometimes they move. Then they look at their financials, right? And they say, all right, I've paid off my mortgage, or I need to take a reverse mortgage. So essentially, there is a process through which someone in an educational seminar within essentially 2 hours can walk you through and say, you know what, here's how you do it. You add up all of your expenses, you add up all of your income, you figure out the gaps, you figure out what you need to put in there. And so it's literally putting the numbers down on paper, and that's how you figure this out.
How do you find out where's the best place to live for you?
That's a great question. Mostly people are worried about cost of living and weather. So the reason the majority of people move is because they're tired of paying taxes for school districts that their children are no longer using.
Right.
So they choose states with no tax, and or cheaper cost of living, the rent is cheaper, etc. And also they are tired of winters, the New York winters that we have. And those are the two main drivers for it. And of course, some people like nature or photography and they want to be, outdoors, etc. But the main decision is based on, can you afford to stay where you are, and can you handle the weather? So once these two are answered, that's when people start exploring kind of what areas they like. They take discovery tours. There are companies that actually help you do that. It's a process by which you actually figure out, can you fit in there or not? Do you like people around, And we always say, go there and live there for a couple of months and see how you like it. Because visiting is one thing, but when you actually rent and you're there for 3 months and then you actually encounter all the things that are going to bother you, all the people who will bother you if you live there. So, and talking about that, strategy of being one step ahead, I spoke with one of these expos, Ideal Living Expo, and they actually do put people in touch with developers in other states. And one couple told me, we kept going down to Florida with our children, to Disneyland, and we kept going for a week or two every year. And we've done this 20 times, and we know exactly where we want to retire, where we want to live. And that repetition is actually something that works extremely well for us, because it's difficult to get used to new things. Always. It's difficult to manage change, right? So if there is one area that's really calling your name, be that mountains or, Florida, whatever that is, I would advise people to make a regular trip there as you're still working.
Is there a formula that if you're making $50,000 or $100,000, is there a formula that you should figure out how much you're going to need in retirement?
There is. So if you want a shortcut and if you want to avoid work, there's always a formula. And that traditional number, it's called the replacement ratio. And traditionally, we're talking about 70% of income. So why? Because you no longer need to buy the suit to go to work. Hopefully your mortgage is paid down. But just like with any shortcut, it works for some people and it doesn't work for others. So I would very much encourage people to look at their individual situation and figure out that number for themselves. Because who knows? Maybe you weren't, wearing suits when you went to work.
Is there one best place to retire? I know you mentioned going to different places, but like out of the country or in the country. I mean, because you have to consider health care. I mean,
Absolutely.
That's a big issue.
Absolutely. And is there one best place? I've interviewed people in Costa Rica. There is a big expat community in Costa Rica, and people who live there love it. And people who retired there and hated it moved back. So, the problem with anywhere we are is that we're there. So, you're going to like certain things and not like other things. You might love the climate and the natural organic food in Costa Rica, but hate the fact that everything is bureaucratic, and if you want to replace a credit card, you have to go personally into the office and sit there for 4 hours straight. So it all depends on, what fits with your personality, your budget. Do you want to be close to your family or not? Some people say, we raised our children, our grandchildren are going to college now. Maybe we don't need to be around them, as much. So we're going to live where we want to live. But it's such a complex decision, where you are, what surrounds you, who surrounds you, that really that self-examination is, I think people who are successful, they've gone through that self-examination.
Is there any particular books that somebody should be reading or magazines that you should be reading to brush up on what's coming down the pike, especially here in the United States with health care and Medicare and Social Security? Or is there a website that you should be getting letters about to follow?
There are many, and the political risk, of course, is huge, and that's in every paper now. Political candidates discussing how they're going to fix the Social Security and Medicare and all the programs, right? So that's in the press constantly. But do I like websites? Yes, absolutely. I follow the press. I read the Wall Street Journal. There's excellent information on retirement and, financial markets, etc. I have a website. I invite people to come visit it, and it's called joycompass.com. I have a newsletter, and I analyze issues like this and help people kind of develop their plan and get some free resources. Not everyone can afford a financial advisor or a seminar or something like that, but there's a lot of free information that's available.
A statistic that I read, and I'm not sure if your publicist sent it to me or what, but it said that 3 states have the requirement of teaching finances in school, whereas 35 states have the requirement of teaching sex education.
Right. And I always joke about that. I always say, this is why we're financially
ignorant.
Right. For lack of a better word. Yeah. Absolutely.
So what do you see happening down the pike?
I think that this is why we have an issue with retirement, people not saving enough, it's because the times of the corporations and the government taking care of us are gone. But I don't think people really caught up to the fact that it's up to each of us now to take care of this. And who does well? I'll tell you, from research we know people who do well with this are planners. And who are the planners? They're financially literate people. And that's based on studies by Dartmouth University. So we know that for a fact. Planners create twice the wealth of people who do not plan. So, and these are people who understand the importance of doing so. And I think that financial education needs to be on our agenda, especially for women. That's so important. We'll live longer. Women over 80 or 85, I think, that group, that cohort, the older women,
right,
they are at most risk for poverty. They are at most risk in our society, the most unprotected. And, people say, well, if you don't have enough money, go get a job. Good luck when you're 89, when you're 93. Good luck, So it's so important for us to really take matters into our own hands and realize that financial education is up to us. And resources are available, as I was saying. There are lots of things that you can get for free if you want to. The question is, how do you make yourself want to, what needs to happen for that?
All right, you say there's a lot of resources that are free. What would you say is the best resource for somebody who wants to become literate in the world of finance right now?
Right now, I would say that if you're serious about it, figure out what is your level. Because I want everyone to read the Wall Street Journal, but if that's not your level, right? Then go to simpler resources. Start reading up on finance, on simpler, there's MSNBC, there are all sorts of financial websites, right? That if you Google retirement, you can find your own level, and that's key. You need to start where you are, not where you want to be, right? So that's one of the key things.
Let's talk a little bit more
Right.
about how to write a plan for your retirement, because I know in real estate, I give people this form. It's called a REBNY form, Real Estate Board of New York form, that lists your assets and your liabilities, and then it shows you, and I only fill it out when the market's up, never when it's down.
Right.
But I mean, is there something more you can do as far as planning?
Yes, of course. And I'll give you a nice visual for it. So imagine that you have a 3-layer birthday cake. The big nice ones that they make for, spectacular birthday parties, right? So the first thing that you want to do is, if you're sitting it on a table, you want to make sure that the table is really sturdy and it's going to hold it up. So what's there? There is what we, call estate planning. And it sounds very, very fancy, right? But what's there is the fact that you want to have a will written, right? You don't want the state to determine what happens, right? So you want the advance power of attorney written. So that means that if you have any health issues, who is going to dictate what happens to you, right? They're also known as do not resuscitate orders, right? So that's when you decide what's really going to happen if you lose that, full control over your life, or what happens to your assets after you pass away. And there are multiple components there that we walk people through and help them understand, what are all these documents that need to be put in place. And that's ensuring that the table is sturdy. And actually, one other thing I throw in that is understanding financial scams. Because 1 out of 5 seniors is conned out of money every year in this country.
That's a large number.
That's a large number. That's over 8 million people. Can you imagine every year, 2.6 billion? So the fraud is rampant. A lot of it is perpetuated by other seniors. And because of, it's called affinity tactic. It's, you and I are alike. We're both women. So we tend to trust people like ourselves. And what happens is that people are pulled into, all sorts of schemes. So learning to protect yourself from that, I consider that also a part of that downside protection. right? So you need to understand what's going on there. And for that, I highly advise FINRA website.
What
It's
is
the
FINRA?
FINRA is the regulatory authority. And so whenever something happens and someone makes a complaint, it actually goes to FINRA and they analyze it, they write it up, and they say, here's what's going on all around the country. They know about it first, and they actually are in a position to analyze it and give recommendations as to what to watch out for. And there are free alerts. You can go to their website every month. The Federal Reserve does actually the same thing. They publish excellent alerts. And I always tell people, this is what, when you forward these emails that go around and forward it to 8 other people, that's what you should be forwarding around, just avoid, things like that. And I think what people underestimate is that it's not about being smart. It's about being emotionally vulnerable at certain points in life. This is when, scammers and con artists actually get us. When we're standing there and something is going on and we don't have our full attention on our money or what needs to happen. And when people are emotionally vulnerable, then they are a lot of times under attack from the loved ones, from people who work for them, etc. So that's the essential kind of making sure that's the foundation, right? And then if you think about your financial plan, imagine the first layer of the cake. Sometimes it's actually reinforced with cardboard, is the steady one, right? You want to pile on the other 2 layers on it. And what's that layer? That's all your necessities. And I ask people to go over, what are your necessities? Well, it's my rent, it's the electricity bill, it's the utilities, it's the car. Not in Manhattan, but elsewhere, the basic transportation. And then you take all the basics, and you line it up with completely reliable sources of income. So what goes in there? That's the Social Security payments, despite the political risk, right? Many people expect to get that check. It's the annuity payments, it's the pension plans, right? It's the 401k that are invested in secure investments, but there is very little. There's never a situation where there's no risk, but let's say low risk, right? So once you line that up, what happens there is that people look at their basic expenses and they look at their basic income, and then they can really have that peace of mind that comes with knowing that your basics are covered. You're not going to be homeless. You're going to have the roof over your head. You're going to have food on your table. Maybe you're not going to have a trip around the world every year, but you're going to be fine. And that's very important, that sense of comfort, knowing you're never going to run out of resources, right? So once you line it up this way, then you look at the second layer, and that's your comfort. Right? So that's our designer shoes that we think we cannot live without, but really we can. And, all the trips that we want to take and the cruises and this and that and expensive gifts. And so you line that up. But there you can take a little bit more risk with your investments, because if your portfolio is up a little bit, you can spend more. If it's down a little bit, maybe you don't take 5 trips a year, you take 3 trips a year or 2 trips a year, right? So you line it up that way. And then on top is that layer of the cake that all of us want, that total financial freedom. I can do anything I want to do at any point in time. And a lot of people think that everything that they have in that financial freedom layer, they have to pay for. And I always try to convince people that they don't necessarily have to. There's a way for us to be paid for doing what we love.
Okay,
so for example, I love to travel, and I get invited to be a speaker. So in March, I was a speaker in Washington at an expo, and I was at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. And, my transportation and the hotel is paid for if you're a speaker. And so when I speak to people who are about to retire, I say, can you speak about, what do you know? You have a lifetime of experience. Can you speak about something? Oh, yeah. That's just one way. I worked with a lady, and now we're kind of getting into the realm of coaching, rather than financial advice. But I spoke with this beautiful lady at a seminar who is retiring, I think, to North Carolina. And I said, what do you love to do? She said, I love to hike. well, can you make money hiking? Can you organize groups? And she said, yes, I'd love to do that. She was a part of a mystery hiking, club at one point, and people love the mystery. It's a secret, and you show up, and they tell you, it's gonna go on for 2 hours, and they give you the level of difficulty, but you really don't know where you're going. You just
that's
know.
so clever.
Yeah, and and people pay $20 or $30, whatever, to someone who organizes these trips. And she said, I can't believe it. I'd get paid for doing something that I really like. And that's her health routine as well. That's what she does. It's great for her, just mental health and physical health and all that. And that's what she's going to do because she's looking for part-time income, when she's retired. And this is called actually everyday creativity. And I was surprised to find out, speaking about what they teach at school or not teach at school, I was surprised to find out that it's a whole area of research in creativity that's called everyday creativity. And that's how people actually find these clever ways to, and they figure out how to do something that they love to do, and they get paid for it.
That is so incredible. Wow, it's like the light bulb going off. Do what you love.
Do what you love. And and how do you get to that? We're such excellent problem solvers, right? We love all these multiple choice questions, and we're so good at figuring out that one right answer. And it turns out that that's 50% of what we need to know, problem solving. Everyday creativity is about problem finding. So what researchers are actually saying, if you think that there's only one problem to solve and that I want to do X, Y, Z, but I just don't have the money to do it, then you need to find a better problem. You need to frame it differently. You need to be an excellent problem finder.
Julia, in the closing moments of the show, what would you like to leave the audience with?
Please plan. Time is on your side when you plan. And please remember that you're a problem finder, not just a problem solver.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. It's been great.
Thank you.
It's opened up a lot of different thought patterns here for me.
Oh, wonderful.
And thank you for joining us. And what is your passion to help you over the hump when you're in retirement? Love to hear from you. Please write us here at The Woman's Connection. Bye now.